Hello, hello, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. I'm super thrilled that you're here, and I'm excited to keep doing the Thursday collaboration work. Here's what's happening. I have decided for the next few Thursdays, however long it takes, that I am going to literally be giving you an audiobook for free. The audiobook of my book, Speak From Within, Engage, Inspire, and Motivate Any Audience, is yours for the taking if you come back every Thursday and you listen from the beginning. Last 2 weeks ago was the beginning, now that I think about it. And you can listen to the entire book and go through the exercises and do whatever you need to do. And I'm going to put the link to the book so that you can do the auxiliary exercises with it in the show notes. This episode is brought to you by Brain FM. I use the app every day to recharge, to be productive, to meditate, to get to sleep, to do my deep creative work, to do numbers work, whatever it is I need to do. I'm constantly listening to various pieces of music in Brain FM because it's neuroscience and music and I love it. So it's amazing how much it helps do that work in a way that feels good and positive and incredibly effective. So if you want to try it, you can go to brain.fm/innovative mindset and you can get 20% off. Shh, don't tell anyone. No, actually, I'm kidding. Tell everybody that you can get 20% off the app if you decide to try it. And that's my little gift from me to you. And yes, because I'm an affiliate, because I love it so much, I might get a little bit of cash if you do decide to do it through my link. I love Brain FM, so I'm happy to talk about it ad infinitum, but I want to go ahead and get to Speak From Within. So I stopped last week in the middle of chapter 2 because, my goodness, I didn't realize quite how long chapter 2 was. And now I'm going to give you the very last sentence before I stopped last week, so you'll hear it again if you just finished listening to the first part of chapter 2. And then I'll get right into the next part of chapter 2. So here we go. That moment freed me, and I believe you can free yourself too. But what if you're not ready for a big psychological breakthrough right now? That's perfectly fine. Let's explore some practical tools you can use if you know you have to speak in front of people and you're just terrified. Bearing in mind that some of us have social anxiety that debilitates us to the point where we need medication or counseling, so if that's something you have a deep issue with, I encourage you to take care of yourself in the manner that works best for you. In my mind, that fear, that abject terror, comes upon us because of one of two things. Either we feel like we're going to totally screw it up and look like complete idiots, or we feel judged before we even go out there to speak. Regardless, it is a fear response, and the best way to deal with those responses, I think, is to name them. You could name your fear response something like Murgatroyd or Aloysius or Gertrude, but do name it. Become friends with it. Go have a beer with it. Okay, I don't mean to go actually have a beer, but you might want to sit down and ask yourself some questions. Or rather, ask Aloysius or Murgatroyd or Gertrude some questions. Where have they come from? What is the worst that they think could happen? And really listen to yourself for the answer, because that call is coming from inside the house. If you ask, you'll find the reason why you're so terrified. And once you find it, you can deal with it. Mission. Ask your fear some questions. Take a piece of paper. At the top half, draw your fear. Draw Murgatroyd or Aloysius or Gertrude or whichever name you chose. Is it in human form? Is it an amorphous, inky blob? What does it look like? Flesh it out and conceptualize it. That'll enable you to get a handle on it. The unknown, or what we think is unknowable, always feels more dangerous than the known. When I'm in a quandary, one of the things I'll do is think about my role. Who am I in this scenario? What am I here to do? This question, what's my role, is a particularly important one. It deserves its own chapter. See chapter 12. Heck, it might deserve its own book, but we'll hit the highlights here. Sometimes, in order to function, we need to have rules. We need to set up boundaries. We need to make our own playing field. It's impossible to play basketball without a court and some nets. If you try, you're just playing catch. You need some parameters, some tasks, a role to play. I would argue the same could be said for just about anything. Can you make art without materials? I suppose you can sing or dance, but even then, aren't you bound by gravity? Aren't you bound by the limits of what our bodies can do? Don't your limbs, flexibility, and strength limit you? Those are all parameters. The materials we use to make art, the pencils or paint or crayons, the paper and the clay, they all provide a sort of boundary by giving us the medium in which we will work. Once we know that, we can start imagining how things might go. You won't, or rather, you probably won't, try to make a sculpture out of a paintbrush, some tubes of paint, and canvas. You might decide to make a still life, but will it be a sculpture? The paint tube's role is not to be a sculpture. The paint tube's role is usually to provide the color for a painting. Certainly, some artists might use it in different ways, but for the most part, we're going to use the paint the way it was intended to be used. We're going to use a basketball for its intended purpose as well. Once we know the thing's role, we know at least something about how to proceed. I also ask myself, if I were someone who knew how to deal with this, what would I do? That one is a gold mine. I've used it to get myself out of the weirdest situations, and that's because it works. It works because it lets you get out of your own way. You will do for other people things you will never do for yourself. You'll take chances for others. You'll strive to help others. You will move mountains for them, but you will leave yourself hanging. Often, we are warriors and heroes on the behalf of anyone else, and we won't do the same for ourselves. And this prompts the question, if you'll do it for others, what keeps you from doing it for yourself? So the next time you have to step in front of people to speak, or you're speaking one-on-one to someone who makes you nervous, ask yourself this question. If I were someone who knew what to say and how to behave, what would I do? Give yourself a few minutes to think of the answer. It will come. It's a simple exercise, but it's effective. It'll surprise you. Are your insides serving you? I heard something a long time ago that resonated with me. The very things that helped you survive when you were a child are the things that can be your biggest stumbling blocks as an adult. You developed skills in order to get by when you were a child. We all did. But those skills cost. They might make you less than flexible in some situations because those skills are born of the need to defend yourself against one thing or another. They were coping mechanisms when you were young, but they are either crutches or limiting factors for you as an adult. Allow me to give another example from my own life. When I was a child, in order to keep my father from getting violent, I had to convince him that he would be wrong to go forward with his plan of beating us. In his mind, we had committed some infraction that necessitated discipline. It was my job to convince him not to do it by any means necessary, so I developed incredible debate skills. I could out-argue anyone. I also had to see things in black and white. I was right and he was wrong, and there was zero gray area. I would defend my stances vigorously because if I failed, someone would be hurt. I was a terrific debater, and no one could beat me in a discussion. As an adult, these skills became less necessary, yet I kept them as my primary mode of interaction. This sort of black and white thinking created challenges when I needed to compromise. In fact, it made compromise a grievous error instead of a situation where everyone could get something they wanted, even if they didn't win everything. In my mind, compromise was a defeat, and defeat was dangerous. It took me years and a patient husband to stop relying solely on my debating skills to communicate. I had to build an entirely new skill set in order to see the gray areas and learn how to give and take in discussions. We all develop compensatory strategies as we grow up and mature. As children, we are sponges and we learn to adapt quickly to our environment. Certainly, your strategies would not necessarily need to be as extreme as mine, but likely you developed coping skills as you grew up as well. Another example might be the class clown. Certainly, a child who needs attention or who wants to deal with feeling awkward or shy might become the school jokester. That skill, the ability to make a joke out of any situation, is a terrific strategy for an introverted and intelligent child who needs a coping mechanism. Yet, as an adult, that same person might have difficulties being serious when a situation warrants it. They might have to overcome that inclination to make jokes in order to proceed past that awkward phase of a relationship and deepen it into intimacy. So, we can see that those useful childhood skills might not stand us in good stead when we grow up. In fact, they might become obstacles to navigate as we move through our lives. They might even become patterns we have to dismantle in order to thrive. Take a moment and think of something that you used to do when you were a child and you faced fear or difficulties. Did you compensate? If so, what did you do? Do you still do it today? And do you ever hear from anyone that trait or habit makes it harder to interact with you? Those skills and strategies were crucial when you needed them, but they may no longer serve you, and you will have to let them go. Think of these skills as the stiff muscles around an injury. Think of the way the muscles and tendons around a sprain often hurt worse than the sprain itself. The body sends immobilizing fluids and material to the location of an injury because keeping it still will help it heal. After a while, it heals, but the stiffness persists, and then you have to do the physical therapy to release all of that protective tissue. It had its purpose, but to regain mobility and to thrive again, you have to let it go, and you have to make it dissolve. The same holds true with storytelling and communication. An opportunity to share. What if we were to look at public speaking as an opportunity to connect? What if we transform this interaction, because that is what it is, into an opportunity to share information that our audience wants and needs to have? What if our offering will give them wondrous new information, data, or entertainment that they desire and deserve? That's possible. And how would we know they want it? Because we can listen to them before we speak and get that information directly from them. When we speak to other people, we are sharing, but we must also aim to connect. That is the end goal. Connection. Even if we're nervous, we can evolve to a place where we replace the nervousness with confidence and caring. First, though, we have to check in with ourselves. We must consciously connect to our inner selves and address any fear or anxiety we have about communicating. Here are some ideas on how to check in. I'm going to ask you to do some positive self-talk before you say anything to anyone else. Whether you're at home, work, or out and about, head over to the nearest bathroom or place where you can be alone. Take a moment and breathe. Breathe in and out 3 times, and then talk to yourself. I realize you'll feel silly, and if you giggle, so much the better. Try to go for it in the spirit of fun and say this or something like it. Self, I want to talk with you. I am here to remind you that what you're about to say is important and cool, and the people you're going to say it to will benefit from hearing you. You are going to take the time to connect with them and give them a gift, the gift of your knowledge and wisdom that they want to hear. You will truly communicate, and that is a generous and terrific thing to do. Okay, that might be a little long and hard to remember. So how about instead you say to yourself, Self, remember, you will connect, communicate, and share, and they're gonna love it. Say it to yourself. Try it. Come on. What do you have to lose besides your nervousness? And what you'll gain is a surefire technique that'll improve your ability to stand up in front of an audience with confidence and joy. Here's the thing. You won't merely improve your public speaking, because this same technique applies to any connection, communication, or conversation. In fact, try it before your next one-on-one conversation. Take a second and connect with the other person. Listen to them. Note their speech and body language. Are they relaxed and chill or frantic and anxious? Are they happy, sad, contented, rushed? See if you can glean that information before you say a word. If you're having trouble with that, it's okay. I detail more about how to observe the people you're connecting with later in the book. In the meantime, try your best to connect and communicate. You might think you're headed for failure before you even start, but nothing could be further from the truth. You will not fail. Instead, you will blow their minds. This brings us to the end of Chapter 2 in Speak From Within, Engage, Inspire, and Motivate Any Audience. I hope that you're enjoying this unusual way of listening to an audiobook. I decided to create it this way because, frankly, I wasn't going to do it any other way, and this gives me a chance to get the audiobook out to you if audiobooks are the best way for you to read. Alrighty, let's come back next week for Chapter 3, and that one's called Does Anybody Hear Me? I hope that you are enjoying the book and the show. And if you're liking it, do me a favor, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, or contact me and let me know what you're thinking. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg reminding you to dream big and dare all.